Tonight, we slip away into a world hidden beneath the ordinary one. This is The Silver Chair, the fourth story in the Chronicles of Narnia, a tale of strange places, quiet courage, and a journey where not everything is quite what it seems. But before we step through the doorway into Narnia, my name is Murphy, and I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is for you tonight. And if you enjoy peaceful stories like this, consider subscribing. There are many more quiet nights and journeys waiting for you here. Now there's nothing you need to remember, and no need to follow every detail. Simply get comfortable. So, wherever you are tonight, settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin The Silver Chair. Our story begins at a school called Experiment House. It isn't a happy place. The building sits on the edge of a town, grey and plain, surrounded by a tall stone wall that keeps the students in and the rest of the world out. Inside, the halls are cold, the lessons are dull, and the teachers rarely notice when one student is unkind to another. A girl named Jill Pole goes to this school. She's quiet, a little anxious, and she doesn't have many friends. On this particular autumn afternoon, she's sitting behind the gym building, crying softly. A group of older students have been teasing her again, the same small cruelties that happen almost every day at Experiment House. Jill isn't badly hurt, just tired of it, the way anyone gets tired of the same unkindness repeating itself week after week. While she sits there, a boy named Eustace Scrubb finds her. Eustace is a schoolmate of hers, someone she doesn't know very well, though she's heard that he changed a great deal over the summer. Before, people said he was unpleasant and complaining. Now he seems calmer, more thoughtful, as if something happened to him that nobody else understands. The two of them don't really know each other well before this afternoon. Jill has only seen Eustace from a distance, usually sitting quietly by himself at the edges of the schoolyard, no longer joining in with the loud, unkind games some of the other boys play. She's noticed the change in him too, the way he seems more patient now, less likely to snap at people, though she's never asked him why. Eustace sits down near Jill and asks gently what's wrong. At first she doesn't want to say much, but slowly she tells him about the bullying, about how tired she is of this place. Eustace listens without rushing her. Then, quietly, he tells her something strange. He says that last year, during the summer holidays, he went somewhere far away. Not on a ship or a train, but somewhere impossible, a place beyond their ordinary world. He calls it Narnia. Jill doesn't believe him at first. It sounds like the kind of story children tell to feel better about their boring lives. But Eustace speaks so plainly, so calmly, without any hint of showing off, that she starts to wonder if he might be telling the truth. He describes a land with talking animals, with a golden lion, with adventures that felt more real than anything back at school. As the afternoon goes on, the two of them keep talking. They walk slowly along the narrow path that runs behind the gym, staying hidden from the other students. There's a door in the wall there, a wooden door that leads out toward the open moor beyond the school grounds. It's usually locked, but today, for reasons neither of them can explain, it's open just a little. Eustace suggests they go through it, just to get away from the school for a while. Jill agrees. It feels good to walk somewhere quiet, away from the shouting and the rules, even if it's only for a short time. The moor beyond the wall is empty and calm, covered in low grass and grey stone, with a wide sky stretching out above them. They walk slowly across the open ground, in no particular hurry. glad simply to be away from the noise of the school for a while. The moor stretches out gently around them, quiet and still, broken only by the soft sound of wind moving through the low grass and the distant call of some bird circling overhead. Jill finds her shoulders relaxing a little more with every step, the tightness of the school day slowly easing out of her. As they walk, Eustace tells Jill more about his journey to Narnia. He explains that the doorway there isn't like the doors we know. Sometimes, he says, the space between worlds gets thin in certain places, and if you know how, or if you're simply lucky, you can slip through. He wonders quietly if it might be possible to go there now, together. Jill, half curious and half doubtful, asks how they would even try. Eustace remembers something from his last visit. He was told that if he ever wanted to return to Narnia, he could call out to a certain name. He hesitates only a moment before saying the name aloud, calmly, the way someone might say an old friend's name after a long time apart. He calls out to Aslan. For a moment, nothing happens. The moor stays quiet. The wind moves gently through the grass, and Jill starts to think this was all just a strange story after all. Then something changes. The wall behind them, the ordinary stone wall of their school, begins to look different. Where solid stone was before, they now see a soft golden light, warm and inviting, like sunlight falling through summer leaves. Jill and Eustace stand close together, watching the light grow. It doesn't feel frightening. It feels the opposite, calm and welcoming, like the entrance to somewhere safe. Slowly, without needing to talk about it first, they step forward together, through the light, leaving Experiment House and its cold hallways behind them. They find themselves standing on the edge of something enormous. Beneath them stretches a cliff so high that the ground far below is hidden in soft clouds. The air here feels different too, lighter, cleaner, filled with the calm hush of a very peaceful place. This is not Narnia yet. This is somewhere higher, somewhere older. This is the edge of Aslan's own country. Jill, a little unsteady from the height, steps too close to the edge, and for one moment loses her footing. Eustace reaches to help her, but in his hurry he's the one who slips, falling from the cliff into the clouds below. Jill is left alone at the top, frightened and unsure what happened to her friend. But strangely, the fear doesn't last long, because something calm and steady is already approaching her from across the grass. A large lion walks toward her, unhurried, his gold coat catching the soft light of this quiet country. Jill doesn't know yet that this is Aslan, but somehow she isn't as afraid as she expects to be. There is something about the way he moves, patient and gentle, that makes her feel she can trust him, even here, even now, in a place so far from anything she's ever known. Aslan speaks to her calmly. He tells her that Eustace is safe, that he blew him gently down toward Narnia with his breath, the way wind carries a leaf. Jill feels relieved to hear this, though she still feels shaky from everything that's happened. Aslan doesn't rush her. He lets her settle, lets her catch her breath, the way anyone would after a long and strange day. He explains to her, softly, why she has come to this place. There is a task waiting for her in Narnia, something important, though not something she needs to feel frightened by. An old king named Caspian, someone who ruled Narnia many years ago, lost his only son. The prince disappeared long ago and has never been found. Aslan tells Jill that she and Eustace have been called here to search for him. To help her, Aslan gives her 4 signs, Simple instructions she must remember and follow, in order, no matter what strange or confusing things happen along the way. He tells her that the world below is full of distractions, and that people often forget important things when they grow comfortable or tired. He asks her to repeat the signs to herself every morning and every night, so they stay clear in her memory. Jill listens carefully, sitting quietly on the soft grass while Aslan speaks, feeling the calm of this high place settle into her more with every passing minute. She finds she isn't in any hurry to leave, even knowing an important task waits for her below, simply because everything here feels so unhurried and safe. The first sign, he tells her, is this. As soon as Eustace sets foot in Narnia, he will meet an old, dear friend, and he must greet that friend at once, for if he does, it will help them greatly. Jill listens closely, trying to hold on to the words carefully, the way someone holds a delicate object they don't want to drop. There are 3 more signs still to come, but for now, Aslan tells her they must begin. He explains that he will breathe upon her, the same way he did for Eustace, and this breath will carry her down from this high, quiet country into Narnia itself. Jill feels calm as she listens, ready, even a little excited beneath her nervousness. Before she goes, Aslan reminds her of one more thing, quietly, the way a friend might repeat something important before parting. He tells her the air of Narnia will be busy, full of sounds and sights that crowd the mind, and this is exactly why the signs must be practiced calmly, morning and night, until they sit as comfortably in her memory as a familiar path. Jill promises she will try, and Aslan simply nods, unhurried, as though he has all the time in the world to wait for her answer. The last thing Jill notices, just before the breath carries her away, is how still everything feels in that high country. There's no rush there, no sense of hurrying toward anything. Even the slow drift down toward Narnia happens gently, more like sinking into warm water than falling. She closes her eyes for a moment, letting the calm of that place settle into her, and when she opens them again, the light around her has changed entirely. Jill arrives in Narnia quietly, the golden light fading into ordinary daylight. She finds herself standing at the edge of a forest, the air warm and smelling faintly of pine and damp earth. Everything feels calm here, unhurried, like a long afternoon with nowhere to be. She takes a moment just to breathe, letting her heartbeat settle after the strange journey. Not far off, she spots Eustace. He looks a little dazed himself, brushing dust from his clothes, clearly still getting used to being back in this world he remembers from before. When Jill reaches him, they greet each other with relief, glad to find they've both landed safely, even if not quite together. As they talk, Jill remembers the very first thing Aslan told her, that Eustace must greet an old friend the moment he arrives in Narnia, and that it matters greatly that he does. But by now, caught up in explaining where they are and what happened, Eustace has already let a little time pass without greeting anyone at all. Jill doesn't say anything about it yet. She simply notes it quietly to herself, hoping it won't cause trouble later. The 2 children begin walking, following a worn path that leads toward a large castle in the distance. Its walls are pale stone, warmed gold by the afternoon sun, with banners moving gently in the breeze. This, Eustace explains, is Caer Paravel, the castle where the kings and queens of Narnia have lived for generations. He remembers it from his last visit, though it feels different revisiting a place after time has passed. The path winds gently along the edge of the forest before opening out towards the coast, and Jill finds herself enjoying the walk, despite everything strange about the day. The air smells of salt and warm grass, and gulls circle lazily overhead, calling to one another across the wide blue sky. It's a peaceful walk, unhurried, giving both children time to settle into this new world a little before reaching the castle gates. When they arrive, they're welcomed calmly by the castle's guards, who lead them inside without much fuss, as if travelers from other worlds are not entirely unusual around here. Eustace hopes to see King Caspian, the ruler he remembers fondly from his earlier adventure. But something feels different about the castle today. There's a quiet heaviness in the air, a stillness that doesn't quite match the peaceful mood of the place. They're brought into a hall where they find not Caspian himself, at first, but some of his court, older now, more careful in the way they speak. Slowly the truth comes out. King Caspian is away, out at sea, and has been gone a long while. The king they remember as strong and cheerful has grown old in the years since Eustace last saw him, and time in Narnia moves differently than it does in their own world. Soon word reaches the household that Caspian has actually returned to the harbour, and before long the old king himself arrives at the castle. Eustace can hardly believe how much time has changed him. Caspian's hair has gone grey, his steps slower, though his eyes still hold the same warmth Eustace remembers. Caspian, in turn, is delighted and moved to see Eustace again, greeting him kindly, welcoming Jill as well, even though she's a stranger to him. As they settle into a quiet room together, Caspian tells them why the castle feels so heavy with sadness. Years ago, his only son, Prince Rilian, disappeared and has never been found. Caspian's voice grows soft and tired as he speaks of it, the grief of it clearly still sitting close to his heart even after so long. Jill sits quietly, listening, feeling for this old king, even though she's only just met him. There's something gentle and dignified about the way he carries such a long, deep sadness, without bitterness, simply as something he has learned to live alongside all these years. He tells them the story slowly. Rilian's mother, the queen, died some years earlier after being bitten by a strange and enormous serpent while resting in the forest near the castle. It was a quiet, sorrowful loss for the whole kingdom. Afterward, Rilian, grieving deeply for his mother, spent long hours riding alone through the woods, unable to settle, searching perhaps for some way to make peace with what happened. One day, Rilian returned from one of these rides looking pale and unlike himself, telling his companions that he had seen a beautiful lady in green in the forest, someone unlike anyone he'd met before. After that day, he kept returning to that same part of the woods again and again, quiet and distracted, as though something there had taken hold of his thoughts. Then one morning, Rilian rode out and never came back. His horse returned alone, and though search parties combed the forest for weeks, no sign of the prince was ever found. Caspian tells the children that the kingdom searched everywhere, that hope slowly faded, and that even now, so many years later, no one has learned what became of his son. Caspian explains that he is old now, his health uncertain, and that before he dies, he hopes desperately to know what happened to Rilian, even if the news turns out to be sad. He has decided, he tells them, to take one more voyage, to seek out wisdom or help from distant lands, hoping something might still be done. He plans to leave Narnia again soon, entrusting the kingdom to his advisors while he's away. Listening to all this, Jill suddenly remembers, with a small jolt, the first sign Aslan gave her, She turns to Eustace and reminds him quietly that he was meant to greet an old friend the very moment he arrived in Narnia. They both realize with a sinking feeling that the old friend must have been Caspian himself, and that in all the excitement of arriving and exploring, Eustace never greeted him properly, right away, as he was told to. They feel troubled by this mistake, worried they've already gotten something wrong before their search has even begun. But there's no going back now, only forward. Jill tells Eustace they need to remember the rest of Aslan's signs carefully from here on, and be far more careful not to let anything else slip past them unnoticed. That evening, before the castle settles into sleep, Jill and Eustace sit together near a window overlooking the quiet sea, watching the last light fade slowly over the water. Neither of them says very much. There isn't much need to. After such a long day of stories and sad news, it feels good simply to sit quietly together, listening to the soft sound of waves far below the castle walls. A servant brings them a warm drink before bed, something mild and sweet, and reminds them gently that a long road often begins with a good night's rest. Jill finds she likes this advice. She repeats the first sign to herself once more before falling asleep, whispering the words softly under her breath, determined not to let anything else slip past her the way the greeting to Caspian had. As Caspian prepares to leave on his own journey, Jill and Eustace quietly decide that they must begin their search for Rilian themselves. It feels like a large task for two children so far from home, but they remember why they were sent here in the first place, and they agree, calmly and together, that they will do their best to follow the signs and find the missing prince. That same night, after the castle has gone quiet and everyone else has settled into sleep, Jill and Eustace are woken gently by a soft, rustling sound at their window. A group of owls has come to find them, sent by friends in the castle who thought the children might want quiet advice before setting out. The owls speak in low, hushed voices, the way creatures do when they'd rather not wake anyone else, and they explain that a meeting has been arranged for later that night, once the castle is fully asleep, to talk over the search properly, away from curious ears. Jill and Eustace dress warmly and follow the owls out into the cool night air, feeling a little strange being awake at such an hour, though not at all afraid. The owls lead them to a quiet, sheltered part of the castle grounds, where a small gathering of other owls waits among the branches of an old tree, blinking down at them with wide, patient eyes. This quiet nighttime meeting, the children learn, is something the owls hold from time to time, when there's something important to discuss that's better spoken of softly, under cover of darkness. Here, the owls tell Jill and Eustace more about the wild lands to the north, and they suggest, kindly, that a marsh wiggle living at the edge of a nearby marsh might make a fine and steady companion for such a long journey. One of the owls, a large, calm bird named Glimfeather, offers to carry the children through the night sky themselves, so they can meet this marsh wiggle without losing a single day of daylight travel. Jill finds the night flight strange and wonderful all at once, the cool air rushing past her as Glimfeather carries her steadily above the sleeping Narnian countryside, the moon lighting the fields and rivers below in soft silver light. She holds on carefully, trusting the owl's steady wings, watching the land drift by beneath her, until at last they begin to descend toward a low, misty marsh at the edge of the wilder northern country. Glimfeather sets the children down gently at the edge of the marsh, in the cool hush just before dawn, then bids them a soft farewell before flying off again toward home. Jill and Eustace standing quietly in the misty half-light, wait for the sky to lighten a little before making their way toward a small, cone-shaped hut they can just make out among the reeds. Before setting out further, they're glad to have been advised that they'll need a guide, someone who knows the wild lands beyond Narnia's borders, since the road ahead will take them far from anywhere familiar. They've been pointed toward this same marshy area, not far from the castle, where a strange but gentle creature is said to live. They find him sitting quietly outside a small, cone-shaped hut near the edge of the marsh, fishing without much hope of catching anything. His name is Puddleglum, and he's a marsh wiggle, a tall, thin creature with a long, solemn face and hands and feet a bit like a frog's. He speaks slowly, in a calm, gloomy sort of way, always expecting the worst, but never seeming truly upset about it. The marsh around his hut stretches out flat and quiet in every direction, dotted with tall reeds and shallow pools that catch the pale afternoon light. It's a peaceful sort of landscape, still and unhurried, matching Puddleglum's own calm, unhurried way of speaking perfectly. Jill finds herself liking the place at once, despite how muddy and damp everything is underfoot. Jill and Eustace explain their quest, and Puddleglum listens with the same steady, unhurried expression, nodding now and then. He tells them in his own dry manner that he doesn't expect the journey to go well, that most journeys like this one end poorly, but that he supposes he'll come along anyway, since somebody sensible ought to keep an eye on two children heading off into danger. Despite his gloomy words, there's something comforting about Puddleglum. His calm, steady voice, even when saying discouraging things, makes the whole adventure feel a little less frightening. Jill finds herself smiling at his odd way of speaking, and even Eustace, who doesn't know him yet, seems to relax a little in his company. The three of them spend the rest of that day preparing quietly for the journey. Puddleglum gathers a few simple supplies from his hut: blankets, some dried food, a small cooking pot. Nothing fancy, just what's needed for a long walk through unfamiliar country. Jill and Eustace are given warmer clothes for the road ahead, since Puddleglum warns them the north grows cold quickly once you leave the gentler parts of Narnia behind. As evening settles in, they eat a simple meal together outside the hut, the marsh quiet around them, filled with the soft calls of birds settling down for the night. Puddleglum talks a little about the lands to the north, the wide moors, the giant country, and the deep places under the earth that some say exist far below Narnia's surface. He doesn't say much to frighten them, just enough to help them understand what kind of journey lies ahead. The marsh around them settles into its own quiet evening rhythm as they eat, mist rising gently off the still water, small lights flickering here and there among the reeds where other marsh wiggles tend their own small fires. Jill finds it a peaceful sort of place, despite Puddleglum's gloomy talk, calm and unhurried in a way that suits him perfectly, and by the time they finish eating, she feels more ready for the journey ahead than she expected to. The next morning, they set out early, the sky pale and cool, the grass still damp with dew. Their path leads them away from the marsh, away from the castle, and steadily north, toward hills that grow taller and wilder the further they walk. For the first days, the journey is peaceful, calm even, with long, quiet stretches of walking through soft, empty countryside. Jill uses this time to keep Aslan's signs fresh in her mind. Each night, before sleep, and each morning, just after waking, she repeats them quietly to herself, the way Aslan told her to. She reminds Eustace of them too, especially now, after their first mistake with Caspian, wanting to make sure nothing else slips past them unnoticed this time. As the days pass, the land begins to change around them. The soft green hills of Narnia give way slowly to rockier ground, then to wide, empty moorland, grey and windswept, stretching out further than they can see. The air grows cooler, the trees fewer and more twisted, and even Puddleglum, usually so calm, admits quietly that they're nearing the edge of the lands he knows best. One afternoon, walking along a high, rocky ridge, they catch their first sight of movement in the distance, tall shapes moving slowly across the far hills. Puddleglum explains, without much alarm in his voice, that these are likely giants, creatures that live in this northern country, some peaceful, some less so. He tells them they should be careful, but not to panic, since not every giant means harm. That evening, they make camp carefully, keeping their fire small and their voices low, just to be safe. Puddleglum tells them a little more about a particular group of giants who live in a grand castle further north, at a place called Harfang. He mentions, almost as an afterthought, that the road there passes near ancient ruins, a city that giants once lived in long ago, now empty and broken down by time. Jill listens closely to everything he says, filing it away carefully in her mind, though nothing about it seems especially important yet. She's more focused on staying warm and getting enough rest before another long day of walking. Still, something about the mention of the ruined giant city stays with her, quietly, the way small details sometimes do before we understand why they matter. Their days settle into a simple, steady pattern. They rise early, share a plain breakfast of whatever Puddleglum has managed to gather or cook the night before, and walk for long stretches without much talking, letting the quiet of the moor fill the silence between them. At midday they rest briefly, eating a little more, stretching tired legs, before continuing on until the light begins to fade, and it's time to make camp again. Jill finds she doesn't mind this simple rhythm nearly as much as she expected to. There's something calming about having so little to think about beyond walking, eating, and resting, especially compared to the noise and worry of school. Even Eustace, who grumbles a little about sore feet some evenings, admits that the steady routine of the road has its own kind of comfort to it. Over the following days, they continue walking steadily northward, the land growing wilder and emptier the further they go. Puddleglum keeps them moving at a careful pace, mindful of the cold and the uncertain path ahead, while Jill and Eustace grow more used to the rhythm of the journey, one quiet day following another, each one bringing them closer to the mysterious lands of the giants and, somewhere beyond that, to whatever answers await them about the missing Prince Rilian. After several more days of steady walking, the travelers reach a wide, open stretch of land where the remains of an old city rise up from the grass and stone. Once, long ago, this must have been a place where giants lived and built and worked. But now it's quiet, its walls broken, its towers crumbled down into low, mossy mounds. Jill thinks it has a strange, peaceful feeling to it, like a place resting after a very long life. The light that afternoon has a soft, pale quality to it, filtering gently through thin winter clouds and settling over the broken stones like a quiet blanket. Their footsteps seem louder here somehow, echoing faintly off the old walls, though nothing about the ruins feels unwelcoming, just old and still, and worth exploring slowly. They decide to stop here for a while, both to rest and to look around, since the ruins seem safe enough in the pale afternoon light. Jill and Eustace wander between the old stones, curious about the shapes and carvings left behind by whoever built this place so long ago. Puddleglum stays close by, watching the sky and the horizon out of habit, though even he seems calm here, less worried than usual. The three of them take their time exploring, in no real hurry after so many days of steady walking. Jill sits for a while on a low, flat stone, warmed slightly by the afternoon sun, watching small birds hop along the broken walls, pecking at seeds hidden in the cracks. It feels good simply to rest here, surrounded by quiet history, the wide sky stretching calmly overhead. As Jill walks along one of the broken walls, she notices something carved into the flat stones beneath her feet, deep grooves cut long ago, forming shapes that might be letters, though worn and faded by wind and rain. At first, she doesn't think much of it, just old marks left by whoever lived here once, the kind of thing you might see on any ancient ruin. But something about the pattern catches her attention, and she crouches down to look more closely. Slowly, piecing the faded letters together in her mind, she realizes they form words, an actual message left in the stone floor. She calls Eustace and Puddleglum over, and together they trace the letters carefully, spelling out what the ancient writing says. As Jill reads the words aloud, a quiet, uneasy feeling settles over her. She suddenly remembers Aslan's signs, and with a small shock, she realizes this message must be one of them, the very sign she was supposed to be watching for all along. In the business of walking and talking, and simply getting through each day, she had let the exact wording slip a little from her memory. And now here it is, written into old stone, exactly where she needed to find it. The message tells them, in its own quiet way, that beneath the ruins where they now stand lies a way down, an entrance leading underground, and that they are meant to follow it. Jill feels a small wave of panic rise in her, not from fear exactly, but from realizing how close they came to walking straight past something so important without noticing it at all. She explains everything to Eustace and Puddleglum, admitting honestly that she hadn't kept the signs as clearly in her memory as she should have. Neither of them blames her for it. Puddleglum, in his calm, unhurried way, simply says that these things happen, that memory is a tricky thing, especially on a long journey, and that what matters now is what they do next. They look around the ruins more carefully, searching for any sign of an entrance leading down beneath the ground. But nothing obvious presents itself. The stones are solid, the ground beneath them ordinary, and after a while of searching, they begin to wonder if the way down might be hidden somewhere they haven't looked yet, or perhaps somewhere nearby, rather than directly under their feet. Jill walks slowly around the edges of the ruins one more time before they give up the search for the day, running her hand along the old weathered stones, half hoping something else might catch her eye. Nothing does, though, and eventually she rejoins the others, tucking the memory of the carved message carefully away to think about later. Puddleglum, ever practical, suggests that since it's growing late and the light will fade soon, they should press on toward Harfang first, the giant's castle Puddleglum mentioned earlier, since it's said to be not far beyond these ruins. He reasons they can ask about the ruins, or perhaps rest and gather supplies there, before coming back to search more carefully for the way down that the message described. Jill isn't entirely sure this is the right choice, feeling a quiet pull to search the ruins more thoroughly before moving on. But between the fading daylight and Puddleglum's steady confidence, She agrees to continue toward Harfang for now, trusting that they can return to this task once they've rested and learned more about the surrounding land. As they walk on, leaving the broken towers behind them, Puddleglum voices a few quiet warnings about their path ahead. He reminds them that giants can be unpredictable, that Harfang's people, though said to be gentler than the wilder giants further north, are still not to be trusted without caution. He tells Jill and Eustace to remember their manners, to stay watchful, and not to let their guard down completely, just because they're offered a warm meal and a comfortable bed. As dusk settles that evening, they find a low, rocky hollow to shelter in, just enough to break the wind while they eat a small, quiet meal together. Puddleglum hums something low and tuneless while he tends their little fire, and Jill watches the flames for a long while, thinking about the strange message carved into the ruined stones and wondering what waits for them further along this cold northern road. Eustace, wrapped snugly in his blanket, admits quietly that he's glad Puddleglum came with them. Traveling with someone so steady, even someone who expects the worst at every turn, makes the whole journey feel less frightening, somehow. Jill agrees, and the three of them settle down for the night under a sky thick with slow-moving grey clouds, resting as well as they can before the harder walking still to come. Jill falls asleep more easily than she expects, lulled by the quiet crackle of the fire and the steady sound of Puddleglum's breathing nearby. She dreams, faintly, of green hills and warm sunlight, a peaceful contrast to the cold northern land they're steadily walking through, and wakes the next morning, feeling rested and ready for whatever the day ahead might bring. The land beyond the ruins grows colder and more open, wide moors stretching toward low hills in the distance. Snow begins to dust the ground here and there, and the wind picks up, sharp and steady against their faces. Still they keep walking, following the path Puddleglum believes will lead them toward Harfang, each of them quietly holding on to the hope that answers, and perhaps even Prince Rillian himself, wait somewhere not too much further ahead. As the day wears on, the weather turns harder against them. Snow begins to fall more heavily, and the wind grows sharp enough to sting their faces. Jill finds it difficult to keep track of the path, everything around them turning the same pale white, hills and sky blending together until she isn't sure anymore which direction they're even walking in. Puddleglum tries to keep their spirits steady, though even he admits, in his own calm way, that the weather has turned worse than he expected. They press on together, heads down against the wind, trusting that somewhere ahead, the castle of Harfang will appear out of the snow to offer them shelter. After what feels like a very long stretch of walking, a shape begins to form in the distance through the falling snow. Tall towers and high walls, unmistakably the outline of a great castle. Relief settles over all three of them. They quicken their pace, eager now to reach warmth and rest after such a cold and difficult day. As they draw nearer, they're spotted by the giants who live there. Gentle giants, Puddleglum had said. And true to that, these ones seem friendly enough, if a bit startled to see three small travelers appearing out of the snowstorm. The giants speak kindly, if loudly, their voices booming in a way that takes some getting used to, and they invite the three visitors inside without hesitation. Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum step through the huge doorway into the warmth of the castle, grateful beyond words for the change from the biting cold outside. Everything inside is built to giant scale, the ceilings impossibly high, the furniture enormous, making the three of them feel very small indeed as they're led through wide halls toward a room where a fire burns steadily. Jill can hardly believe how good it feels to be warm again after so many hours out in the wind and snow. The stone floors of the castle radiate a gentle heat from some unseen source, and the tall windows, though built for giant eyes, let in a soft, golden afternoon light that makes the whole hall feel welcoming, despite its strange, oversized proportions. She lets herself relax a little, following their giant hosts deeper into the castle without much worry left in her at all. The giants of Hafang treat their small guests with great warmth, seating them near the fire, bringing blankets, and soon after, offering them food and drink far more generous than anything they'd had on the road. Jill feels herself relaxing for the first time in days, the tension of the journey slowly easing as the fire warms her hands and feet. Over the following day or two, the children settle comfortably into the rhythms of the castle. They're given soft beds, warm meals, and kind attention from the giants, who seem delighted to have visitors and treat them almost like honored guests rather than strangers who wandered in from a snowstorm. Eustace in particular enjoys the comfort, glad for a break from the hard walking and cold nights of the journey so far. Jill enjoys these quiet days too, sleeping late in a soft bed, piled high with warm blankets, wandering the wide halls of the castle in the mornings, watching the giants go about their own tall, slow routines. It feels good to rest properly after so many days of walking, and for a little while she almost forgets about the ruined city and the message they left unfinished there. Puddleglum, however, doesn't relax quite as easily as the children do. Something about the giant's friendliness nags at him, a quiet unease he can't quite explain. He watches carefully during meals, noticing small things, the way the giants sometimes glance at one another, the way certain questions about their visit seem to come up more than necessary. He says little about it at first, not wanting to spoil the children's rest, but he keeps his guard up. One quiet afternoon, while wandering through part of the castle on their own, Jill and Eustace come across a room that seems to be some kind of kitchen or pantry area. Curious, they look through a large book left open on a table there, a cookbook of sorts, filled with entries written in giant handwriting. As they read further, a cold feeling settles over both of them, because tucked among the ordinary recipes are entries that make clear, in the plainest way, that this castle sometimes prepares meals from creatures very much like themselves, and that the household staff have been quietly discussing them as possible ingredients for the very feast being planned. Neither child says much at first, both too shaken to speak, standing there in the quiet kitchen with the terrible book still open between them. Jill feels her stomach drop, understanding all at once how mistaken they'd been to relax so completely into the comfort of the last 2 days. Shaken, they hurry to find Puddleglum and tell him what they've discovered. He listens gravely, nodding slowly, as if this confirms the quiet unease he'd already been feeling since they arrived. Together, the three of them realize how much danger they may actually be in, despite the warm beds and kind words they've been given these past 2 days. They understand quickly that they need to leave the castle, calmly and carefully, without drawing attention to themselves or raising suspicion among the giants. Puddleglum suggests they wait until the household is distracted. Perhaps during some large gathering or event the giants have planned, so they can slip away unnoticed, rather than risk an open confrontation with creatures so much larger and stronger than themselves. As it happens, the giants are indeed preparing for some kind of large autumn feast, and the castle grows busy and noisy with preparations over the following day. Taking advantage of the confusion, Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum quietly gather what supplies they can and make their way toward one of the castle's side doors, moving as calmly and carefully as they're able, hearts beating fast beneath their outward composure. They manage to slip out of Harfang without being stopped, stepping back out into the cold air with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Behind them, the warm lights of the castle fade into the snowy distance as they hurry back the way they came, grateful to have escaped, and newly aware of just how careful they'll need to be for the rest of their journey. Once they've put some distance between themselves and the castle walls, they slow their pace a little, the immediate danger behind them now, though the cold night still presses in around them. Puddleglum finds a sheltered spot among some low rocks where they can rest for a few hours before continuing, and they share what little food remains in their packs, glad simply to be free and moving under their own choice again. Jill finds herself thinking, as she tries to sleep in the cold, about how close they came to real danger without even realizing it at first. She's grateful for Puddleglum's quiet watchfulness, the way his caution, which had seemed almost comically gloomy back at the marsh, turned out to matter so much once real danger was near. She falls asleep eventually, comforted by the steady sound of his breathing nearby, keeping watch even as she rests. Back out in the cold, the three companions retrace their steps toward the ruined city they'd passed before reaching Harfang. The snow is still falling lightly, and the going is slow, but Puddleglum keeps them moving steadily, wanting to put as much distance between themselves and the giant's castle as they can manage before nightfall. When they finally reach the ruins again, weary and cold, they begin searching more carefully this time for the entrance the ancient message spoke of, the way down beneath the old stones. It takes a while, but eventually they find it, a narrow opening hidden among broken slabs of rock, leading down into darkness. There's little discussion needed. They know this is the path they're meant to follow. Puddleglum peers down into the opening first, testing the air with a slow, careful sniff before nodding that it seems safe enough to enter. Jill takes one last look up at the grey winter sky before following the others down, wondering quietly when she might see open daylight again. One by one, they climb down into the opening, leaving the cold, snowy world above them behind. The passage is narrow at first, then widens as they descend, the air growing warmer and stiller the further down they go. Jill finds it strange how quickly the biting winter cold fades away beneath the earth, replaced by a kind of steady, dim warmth. They walk for what feels like a long while, the path sloping gradually downward, lit only by a soft, unclear glow that seems to come from nowhere in particular. Eventually the narrow tunnel opens into a much larger space, and the three of them stop, amazed at what lies before them. It's an entire landscape, hidden beneath Narnia, wide and strange, with its own dim sky and quiet, still air. This underground land seems to stretch on for a great distance, filled with soft grey light, gentle hills, and a stillness unlike anything above ground. Jill feels a mixture of wonder and unease looking out over it, unsure what to make of such a hidden, quiet place existing so far beneath the world she knows. As they continue forward, they soon encounter the beings who live in this underground realm. Tall, pale creatures with quiet, solemn faces, who move without much haste or noise. These are the Earthmen, as they come to learn, and though they don't seem outwardly hostile, there's something guarded and careful about the way they approach the three travelers. The Earthmen lead Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum further into their world, deeper still beneath the surface, toward what appears to be a great underground city. Its buildings are carved from stone and shadow, quiet and orderly, lit by that same soft, dim glow that seems to fill this whole hidden realm. The travellers walk among the Earthmen almost like guests, though not quite free ones either, unsure yet whether they're being welcomed or simply escorted somewhere important. As they walk through the winding streets of this hidden city, Jill notices how calm and quiet everything is here, almost too calm, as though the entire place moves at half the pace of the world above. The Earthmen they pass go about their own quiet business, tending small fires, carrying baskets of pale mushrooms, speaking to one another in low, murmuring voices that never seem to rise above a gentle hum. Eventually they're brought before someone who seems to hold authority here, a tall, graceful woman, dressed in green, with a calm, pleasant manner about her. She introduces herself warmly, speaking gently, asking about their journey with polite interest, and offering them rest and comfort after what she can see has been a difficult few days for them. There's something in her voice, smooth and reassuring, that makes Jill feel oddly at ease, even here in this strange underground world, so far from anything familiar. The lady in green explains that she rules over much of this realm, and that she's happy to help travelers who find their way down here, offering food, shelter, and safe passage while they rest. She leads them personally to a quiet room where a simple meal has been laid out, bread and mild soup, and a warm drink that smells faintly of honey. Jill finds herself eating gratefully, the strange surroundings feeling less unsettling, with a warm meal in front of her, though a small, quiet part of her keeps noticing how carefully the lady chooses her words, how smoothly one polite question follows another. Puddleglum, true to his cautious nature, remains quieter than usual around her, watching carefully, though he says nothing openly against her kindness. The children, tired and relieved to be somewhere warm and calm after their narrow escape from Harfang, find themselves relaxing into her hospitality, at least for the moment. As the lady speaks with them further, gently steering the conversation, the group somehow becomes separated during the following hours, each led off in slightly different directions under one polite excuse or another. Jill finds herself confused about where exactly Eustace and Puddleglum have gone, and a small worry begins to grow in her, even as everything around her continues to seem calm and orderly. Eventually, though, while wandering through part of the underground city with an Earthman guide, Jill and Eustace, reunited again, come across something unexpected. A locked room, quiet and apart from the rest of the city, where they are told a prisoner is kept. Curious and a little uneasy, they ask to see who's held there, and are led, cautiously, toward the door of this hidden chamber, unaware yet of just how important this discovery is about to become. Before they reach the door, Jill takes a moment to look around this part of the underground city more closely. It's quieter here than the busier streets they passed through earlier, the stone walls a little plainer, the soft grey light dimmer, as if this whole section of the city has been kept apart on purpose. She feels a small flutter of nerves, though nothing she can quite explain, as their guide finally stops before a heavy wooden door and pushes it open. Jill and Eustace are led into a quiet, dim room where a man sits alone, dressed in simple dark clothing, looking tired and worn, though not unkind in his manner. He seems surprised to see visitors, and greets them with a soft, careful politeness, the way someone might speak after being alone for a long while. As they talk with him, the man explains, slowly and with some difficulty, who he believes himself to be. He tells them quietly that his name is Rillian, and that he is the son of King Caspian, though he says this in a strange, uncertain way, almost as if he doesn't fully understand his own words even as he speaks them. Jill and Eustace exchange a glance, both feeling a rush of quiet excitement and disbelief. Could this truly be the missing prince they've been searching for all this time? Rilian himself seems unsure how to explain the strange circumstances of his imprisonment here, and slowly, gently, he tells them a little about it. The room around them is simple and plain, lit by a single soft lamp, with little in the way of comfort beyond a low chair and a small table. Jill notices how carefully this man moves, as though even sitting and speaking take more effort than they should, and she finds herself feeling a quiet, careful sympathy for him even before she fully understands who he is. He speaks slowly, choosing his words with care, as though even talking about his situation feels difficult and unfamiliar to him. Jill listens patiently, letting him take his time, sensing that whatever has happened to this quiet, tired man has left him unsure of his own thoughts in ways she can only begin to imagine. He explains that every night, at a certain hour, something strange happens to him. He describes it carefully, saying that for a short time each evening his mind grows clear and troubled, and he remembers things he otherwise cannot recall, memories of his past, of Narnia, of who he truly is. During these times, he says, he must be tied down to a special chair, a chair made of silver, to keep him from causing harm to himself or others. Jill and Eustace listen closely, unsure what to make of this strange explanation. Rilian tells them the lady who rules this underground realm insists this nightly binding is for his own protection, that without it, some terrible madness overtakes him, and that once the hour passes, he returns to his usual calm, forgetful self, unaware of what happened during that troubled time. He speaks about the lady with a strange mixture of warmth and confusion, calling her wise and gentle, someone who has cared for him faithfully through all his years underground, even as some small, uncertain part of his voice seems to hesitate over these very words, as though a quiet doubt sits somewhere underneath everything he's saying, without him quite being able to reach it. As Rilian speaks, the hour he described seems to draw near, and true to his words, a change begins to come over him. His voice grows more urgent, more troubled, and he tells the children almost pleadingly that soon he must be restrained again, as he is every night, and that they should not be frightened by what they're about to see. Just then, the lady of the underground realm arrives, calm and composed as always, along with several of the Earthmen. She explains gently to Jill and Eustace that the prince suffers from a strange affliction each evening, and that it's kindest, safest, to secure him to the silver chair until the troubled hour passes, just as has been done many times before. Rilian, growing more agitated by the moment, is led to a chair made of gleaming silver and carefully bound to it by the Earthmen, who seem practiced and gentle in this task, as though it truly has happened many times before. Jill feels uneasy watching this, though the lady's calm reassurance makes her hesitate to say anything against it. Once bound, something changes in Rilian. His confused, agitated manner falls away, and for the first time since they met him, he speaks with real clarity and urgency. He tells Jill and Eustace quickly and earnestly that he remembers now, that he is truly Prince Rilian of Narnia, that he has been kept here against his will through some enchantment he doesn't fully understand, and that this nightly binding isn't for his protection at all, but to keep him from escaping during the 1 hour when his true mind returns to him. He begs them, with real desperation in his voice, to release him from the chair while his mind is clear, insisting that if they do, He can finally break free of whatever hold has kept him trapped here for so long. Jill and Eustace look at each other, uncertain, remembering the lady's warnings about madness and danger, unsure whether to trust this pleading stranger, or the calm, reassuring woman who brought them here. Puddleglum, who has by now found his way back to the children, watches everything carefully, his usual caution sharpened by everything he's already noticed about this underground realm and its ruler. He listens to Rilian's plea, weighing it seriously, unwilling to dismiss it simply because it goes against what they've been told by someone who has seemed, so far, only kind and welcoming. After a quiet, careful moment of consideration, weighing the prince's desperate honesty against the polished calm of the lady's explanations, Puddleglum makes a decision. He tells Jill and Eustace, steadily and without much hesitation, that he believes they should trust the prisoner, and that whatever danger might come from freeing him, it seems far smaller than the danger of leaving him bound here, night after night, for reasons that no longer make honest sense to any of them. Jill feels her own doubts settle once Puddleglum speaks so plainly. There's something about his steady, unhurried way of deciding things that makes her trust his judgment, even here, even with so much uncertainty hanging in the dim underground air. She nods along with Eustace, and together the three of them turn back towards the silver chair, ready now to act. With Puddleglum's decision made, the three of them move quickly, though carefully, toward the silver chair where Rilian remains bound. He continues to plead with them, his voice clear and steady now, urging them to hurry before his clarity fades again, or before the lady returns to find them acting against her wishes. Jill's hands shake a little as she moves towards the chair, more from nerves than cold, though she keeps her steps steady, trying to match Puddleglum's calm, unhurried confidence. There isn't much time to think things over carefully now, only to act, and she finds a strange kind of clarity settling over her despite the urgency of the moment. Jill and Eustace work at the bindings together, their hands a little unsteady, while Puddleglum keeps watch towards the doorway, alert for any sign of the lady or her earthmen returning. It takes a few tense moments, working at the fastenings of the chair, before Rilian finally manages to pull himself free, breathing hard, looking down at his own hands, as though testing whether this freedom is really happening. No sooner is he loose than the silver chair itself seems to react, and with Rilian's strength added to the children's efforts, they manage to break it apart entirely, the metal cracking and falling away in pieces onto the stone floor. There's a strange feeling in the room as this happens, as though something more than just a physical object has been broken, some old, quiet spell finally shattered along with the chair. Eustace steps back a little, watching the broken pieces settle on the stone floor, feeling a mix of relief and lingering nervousness about what might happen next. Puddleglum simply nods once, satisfied, as though this outcome, unlike most things in his experience, has gone rather better than he expected. Rilian stands slowly, steadier now than they've seen him the whole time they've known him. He looks around the room with new understanding, no longer confused or uncertain, but calm and clear in a way that feels entirely different from before. He thanks them quietly, then tells them plainly who he truly is, confirming again that he is indeed the son of King Caspian, and that he has been trapped here, enchanted, for many years without realizing it himself. He takes a moment, standing there among the broken pieces of silver, to simply breathe, to feel his own thoughts settle clearly for what feels like the first time in a very long while. Jill watches him quietly, struck by how different he seems now. No longer the confused, pleading prisoner from before, but someone steady and sure of himself, the way a king's son ought to be. Just as he finishes explaining this, the door opens, and the lady of the green kirtle returns, along with several of her Earthmen. Her calm expression falters only briefly when she sees the broken chair and Rillian standing free. But she recovers quickly, her voice still smooth and pleasant as she begins speaking to them, trying gently to convince them that something has gone terribly wrong, that Rillian is dangerously unwell, and that they must help restrain him again for everyone's safety. As she speaks, something strange begins to happen in the room. A sweet, heavy scent starts to fill the air, and she takes up a small, stringed instrument, playing it softly while she talks, her voice growing even more soothing, almost hypnotic, as she continues her calm insistence that they are all mistaken, that there is no King Caspian, no Narnia above them, nothing at all beyond this quiet, underground world she describes so gently and so convincingly. Jill and Eustace find themselves growing drowsy, uncertain, their memories of the world above starting to feel distant and dreamlike under the pull of her voice and the strange scent filling the room. Even Rillian, freshly freed, seems to waver, his newfound clarity beginning to blur again beneath her steady, calming words. It's Puddleglum who resists most firmly, even as the enchantment works at the edges of his own mind. He steps forward and, in a moment of clear, deliberate effort, stamps out the fire burning nearby, the source of that heavy, sweet scent filling the room. The sharp pain of the act seems to clear his head at once, and he speaks up firmly, insisting to the others, and to himself, that even if everything the lady says were true, even if there truly were no world above, and no Aslan, and no Narnia, it would still be better to believe in and search for such things than to live quietly and comfortably underground, believing in nothing at all. His words, plain and steady, seemed to break through the fog that had settled over the room. Rillian's mind clears fully once more, and Jill and Eustace find their own thoughts sharpening again as well, the pull of the enchantment weakening with each passing moment. Now that the fire and its strange scent no longer fill the air. Seeing her hold over them slipping away, the lady's calm manner finally begins to crack. Her pleasant expression shifts, and for the first time, something colder and more dangerous shows through. She reveals, without needing to say it outright, the truth of her power here, and how completely she has controlled this underground realm and everyone in it, including Rillian himself, for so many years. What follows happens quickly. The lady, seeing her plans unraveling, changes her shape entirely, becoming something far less gentle and far more dangerous, a great serpent, coiling and striking at those who now stand against her. Rillian, remembering at last the true reason for his years of captivity, and remembering too his own mother's death at the jaws of just such a creature long ago, fights back fiercely, with Puddleglum, and even the children helping, however they can, in the small, chaotic struggle that follows. It doesn't take terribly long, in the end. Rillian's strength and his righteous fury carry him through the fight, and the serpent, the lady of the green kirtle in her true and final form, is defeated, her long hold over this underground world broken at last, along with whatever enchantments had kept everyone here, prince and earthmen alike, quietly obedient to her will for so many years. In the quiet that follows, the room feels strangely calm again, the danger past, the heavy scent gone from the air entirely. Jill sits down for a moment on the broken pieces of the silver chair, catching her breath, hardly able to believe everything that just happened in such a short space of time. Rillian, standing over the fallen creature, breathed slowly, steadying himself, the weight of so many lost years settling gently onto his shoulders, now that the truth of them is finally clear. With the lady's power broken, the room grows quiet again, calmer now, though everyone in it is a little shaken from what just happened. Rillian, breathing hard but steady, takes a moment to gather himself, looking at Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum with real gratitude, understanding fully now just how much they've done to free him from a captivity he barely remembers living through. As they rest briefly, Rillian explained something troubling he'd learned during his time under the lady's control, something he hadn't fully understood until his mind cleared just now. The lady had been planning something far larger than simply keeping him prisoner. She intended to use him once his memory was gone completely, and his loyalty to her secured as a puppet ruler, someone to lead an army of Earthmen up through a hidden tunnel and onto the surface, where they would take Narnia by surprise and claim it for her. This army, Rillian tells them, has already been gathering, preparing for the day the lady decided the time was right. With her defeat, that plan is broken too, but the danger isn't entirely gone yet, since the tunnel and the army both still exist, and there's no telling what the Earthmen, suddenly freed from her control, might decide to do now that their ruler is gone. One of the older Earthmen, a broad, quiet fellow the others treat with some respect, tells them a little more about their people while they gather supplies. He explains that most Earthmen come from a much deeper realm below even this one, a warm, glowing world far under their feet, and that they only came up to this shallower region because the lady summoned them here years ago, for her own purposes. Now that her hold over them has lifted, several of them speak quietly among themselves about returning home, down into that deeper, warmer world, rather than staying in this dim in-between place any longer. Thankfully, the Earthmen themselves seem more relieved than anything else once they understand the lady's spell over them has lifted. Many of them, it turns out, only ever served her because of her enchantments, not out of any real loyalty. And now that she's gone, they seem eager simply to return to their own quiet lives underground, with no real interest in invading the world above at all. Some of the Earthmen even help the small group gather supplies for the journey ahead, offering quiet, grateful nods rather than words, as though relief itself has made them shy. Jill finds herself feeling a quiet sympathy for these pale, solemn creatures, understanding now that they were never truly their enemies, only unwilling servants caught up in someone else's long, careful plan. Still, Rillian and his companions decide it's best to leave this underground realm as quickly and safely as they can, both to bring word back to Narnia of everything that's happened, and to make sure no lingering danger follows them up from below. The Earthmen, grateful for their freedom, agree to help guide them toward a passage leading up towards the surface, a route different from the one Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum originally took down. The journey upward takes some time, the passage narrow and winding in places, sloping gradually toward daylight far above them. As they climb higher, the air grows cooler and fresher, and eventually, after what feels like a very long stretch of walking and climbing, they see a soft glow of daylight ahead, and finally step out once more into the open air of Narnia. Puddleglum climbs the last stretch a little slower than the others, pausing once to look back down at the dim passage behind them, remarking quietly that he never much cared for underground travel and doesn't plan on making a habit of it. Jill laughs at this, tired but happy, glad for his steady, familiar presence beside her as they near the surface. Jill breathes in deeply as they emerge, the cool, familiar air of Narnia filling her lungs after so long spent underground. Everything feels sharper up here, the colors brighter, the sounds clearer, and she finds herself smiling despite how tired she is, simply glad to see the wide sky stretched out above them once more. It's a quiet, deeply relieving moment for all of them. After so many days of walking, searching, and facing danger, both in the cold northern lands and deep beneath the earth, they finally stand together under an open sky again, the familiar green hills of Narnia stretching out before them in the mild light of late afternoon. Rilian, breathing in the fresh air, looks around with something like wonder, taking in a world he hasn't properly seen in years. He tells the others, quietly, how strange and wonderful it feels to stand here again, remembering fully now who he is and where he belongs, after so long spent forgetting. They rest for a while at the edge of the woods, before beginning the journey back toward Caer Paravel, the castle where Rilian was born, and where his father, King Caspian, has waited so many long years for word of his missing son. Jill and Eustace, tired but happy, walk alongside Rilian and Puddleglum, all of them looking forward now to finally bringing this long search to its end. Puddleglum, walking a little slower than the others, allows himself a rare moment of quiet satisfaction, admitting to Jill that he hadn't truly expected things to turn out this well. Even so, he adds in his usual dry way, there's still a long road ahead before they're safely home, and no sense getting too cheerful just yet. Jill laughs softly at this, glad to have him with them all the same. As they travel, Rilian speaks with quiet determination about what needs to happen once they reach the castle. He wants to make sure Narnia is properly warned and prepared, just in case any part of the underground army still poses a risk, though he suspects and hopes that with the lady gone, that particular danger has faded along with her. Slowly, steadily, the small group makes their way back across the familiar Narnian countryside, retracing much of the path Jill, Eustace, and Puddleglum walked so many days earlier, though this time with lighter hearts and a clear sense of purpose. Their long search, which began with confusion and uncertain signs, is finally drawing toward its close, and Prince Rilian, missing for so many years, is at last on his way home. Along the way, they pass again through the quiet green hills Jill remembers from the very start of her time in Narnia, and this time, walking them feels different, calmer somehow, weighted with everything they've been through together. They stop each evening to rest, sharing simple meals and quiet conversation, the miles passing steadily beneath them as the familiar towers of Caer Paravel slowly draw nearer with each passing day. Meanwhile, back at Caer Paravel, King Caspian, old and frail now, has completed his final voyage. His journey didn't bring him the answers he'd once hoped for, but he returns home quietly, content simply to rest again in his own castle, among people who love and care for him after so many years of ruling and searching. The castle staff care for him gently in these final days, keeping his rooms warm and quiet, bringing him simple meals and mild tea, letting him rest as much as he needs. There's a soft routine to these days, calm and unhurried, everyone around him moving quietly, careful not to disturb the peace he seems to have finally found after such a long and eventful life. By the time Jill, Eustace, Puddleglum, and Rilian make their way back to the castle, word has already spread that the old king is nearing the end of his life. There's a soft, gentle sadness in the halls of Caer Paravel, the quiet kind that settles over a household when everyone senses an ending is coming, but accepts it calmly, without panic or despair. The journey back to the castle takes several days, and as they travel, the small group falls into a calm, steady rhythm, walking together through familiar Narnian countryside, resting each night beneath open skies, sharing quiet meals and quieter conversation. Jill finds herself thinking often about home during these last stretches of the journey, wondering what waits for her back at Experiment House, though she pushes the thought gently aside each time, wanting to stay present for whatever comes next here in Narnia first. Caspian is resting in his own chambers when the travelers finally arrive, tired from their long journey, but eager, above all else, to bring him the news they've carried so far. Rilian goes to his father's side gently, and the moment between them, though quiet, is deeply moving. A father and son reunited at last after so many lost years. Jill and Eustace wait respectfully outside the door for a moment before being invited in, giving father and son a little privacy for the first part of their reunion. When they do step inside, the room feels warm and calm, despite its quiet sadness, sunlight falling softly through tall windows onto the old king's bed. Caspian, weak but clear-minded, recognizes his son at once, and though there isn't much strength left in him, his face fills with a peaceful joy at seeing Rilian standing there, alive and whole, and finally free of whatever had kept him away for so long. They speak softly together, father and son, the years of separation folding gently into this quiet, precious moment of reunion. Jill and Eustace stand back a little, watching this reunion unfold, feeling glad and a little tearful themselves at having played their part in finally bringing father and son back together after such a long, uncertain search. There's a calm, settled feeling in the room, the sense of a long story finally reaching the place it was always meant to reach. Not long after this reunion, Caspian's life comes gently to its close, surrounded by his son, and by the quiet comfort of knowing that Narnia will continue on, cared for now by Rilian, who stands ready, older and wiser for everything he's been through, to take up his father's place as king. The castle observes a quiet period of mourning after this, calm and unhurried, the way such things are done in Narnia. There's no wild grief, only a soft, steady sadness shared among everyone who knew and loved the old king, along with a gentle sense of gratitude for the many years he spent caring for this land. Jill and Eustace spend these quiet days simply resting, walking the castle gardens in the mild afternoon light, and sitting with Rilian when he wants company, and leaving him be when he seems to want quiet instead. Puddleglum, too, stays close during this time, his usual gloomy manner softened by everything they've all been through together. He tells Jill one evening, in his own dry way, that he supposes things could have gone a great deal worse, all things considered, and that he's rather glad they didn't. It's about as warm a thing as she's heard him say the whole journey, and she smiles quietly at hearing it. In the midst of this quiet sadness, Jill and Eustace sense that their own time in Narnia is coming to an end as well. Their task, the search Aslan sent them to complete, is finished now, and though they've grown fond of this world and the friends they've made here, they understand it's time for them to return home, back to their own world and their own ordinary lives. Before they leave, they're given a chance to see Aslan once more, back in that same high, quiet country where their journey first began. He greets them gently, and in his presence they feel the same calm reassurance they felt at the very start, a sense that everything that needed to happen has happened as it should, even the difficult parts, even their small mistakes along the way. Jill notices how peaceful this high country still feels, exactly as she remembers it from the very beginning of her journey. The soft grass, the wide sky, the sense of quiet timelessness that seems to fill the air here. She finds herself wishing, just a little, that she could stay longer in this calm, gentle place, though she also feels ready, in her own way, to return to her ordinary life again. Aslan speaks with them softly about their time in Narnia, about the signs they followed, imperfectly at times, but faithfully in the end. He reassures them that this is simply how these journeys often go, that what matters most is not getting everything exactly right from the very beginning, but continuing on with honesty and care even after mistakes are made. They stand together quietly for a while after he finishes speaking, simply enjoying his calm presence, the way one might sit quietly with an old friend before a long goodbye. Eustace tells Aslan, a little shyly, how grateful he is for everything, and Jill nods along, feeling the same quiet gratitude settle warmly in her chest. Then gently, Aslan prepares to send them home, back through the quiet space between worlds, back to Experiment House and the ordinary school life waiting for them there. Jill and Eustace feel a small ache at leaving Narnia behind, but also a calm readiness to return to their own world, carrying with them everything this journey has taught them. They find themselves once again on the grounds of their school, the familiar grey walls and quiet paths appearing around them just as suddenly as they'd vanished before. It feels strange at first, returning to such an ordinary place after everything they've seen and done. But there's also something steady and comforting about coming home. The afternoon light here looks much the same as it did when they left, ordinary and grey, though Jill finds she notices it differently now, grateful in a quiet way for even this plain, familiar world after everything she's seen. Soon after their return, they encounter the same group of students who had been unkind to Jill before all of this began. Just as things start to turn tense, something remarkable happens. A gentle, golden light spreads across the school grounds, and for a brief, quiet moment, the crowd of unkind students seems to lose all its usual confidence, scattering off in different directions, startled by something none of them can quite explain. Jill and Eustace alone understand what's truly happened, sensing calmly that Aslan's presence, if only for a moment, followed them home to see that things were set right. In the days that follow, the school itself begins to change in small, steady ways. The teachers, prompted by the sudden strange events on the grounds, finally start paying closer attention to how students treat one another, and slowly, quietly, Experiment House becomes a calmer, kinder place than it was before. Jill and Eustace watch this change happen gradually, feeling glad in their own quiet way that their journey brought a little more peace home with them too. And so the story of the silver chair comes gently to its end, a tale of a long search, followed patiently, despite confusion and mistakes along the way, of a lost prince finally found and brought home, of an old king's quiet reunion with his son before the close of his life, and of two ordinary children who, for a little while, stepped into an extraordinary world and returned, changed, calmer and steadier for having done so. Thank you for spending this quiet time with the story of Narnia tonight. Let the gentle hills, the soft northern snow, and the calm ending of this long search settle over you now, and let yourself drift, slowly and peacefully, into sleep. If you are still awake, try our other movie story videos. Subscribe if you like the video. Thanks.